Welcome to the New Brunswick Today Show. Good morning, New Brunswick. Good afternoon, New Brunswick. I'm Charlie Cradaville, and we are here with episode 39, live from Hidden Grounds Coffee Shop. We're still dealing with a bit of technical issues, so tune into the YouTube channel later today for the higher quality version of this, but we've got a very special guest, Mark Zinna, one of the Democratic candidates for governor. The election is fast approaching, so we're going to continue with our series of interviews with the gubernatorial candidates. But first, an update on another election. This is an election not a lot of people paid attention to. In New Brunswick last month, there was a school board election for 4 different offices on the school board, and one of those seats, and it came down to one vote between Yesenia Medina Hernandez, the challenger who upset the board president, Emra Seawood. She got 156 votes to Ms. Seawood's 155 votes, a very low turnout, low-key election, but it goes to show you that every vote does count. Now, last night was the first time the board was meeting since that historic vote, and neither Seawood nor Medina Hernandez were there because Seawood filed an application asking for a recount, and that recount is going on right now as we speak. We've inquired to the Board of Elections to find out everything we can about this, and they haven't gotten back to us. So some people are worried that perhaps the political machine is going to keep their person in power as a result of this recount, but we're going to see what comes of it. It is just a one-vote margin, and anyway, last night the board moved ahead without either of those two people on the board. There's only one seat left, and we will know either today or Monday when who will be filling that seat. So stay tuned to the New Brunswick Today Facebook page and our newbrunswicktoday.com website for the update on that election. But today we are here about to bring out our guest, Mr. Mark Zinna. He is actually the council president of Tenafly, New Jersey, a borough in Bergen County, and he is running for the state's highest office. He'll be one of 6 Democrat candidates on the ballot. You've already got to meet a couple of them on our show, and today we've got Mr. Zinna here for you. And to give you a little flavor of what he's all about while we bring him into the studio, take a look. Here is some footage of him addressing a group about the problem of corruption in New Jersey.
We are suffering from a dysfunctional leadership in both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party at the national level and the state level. Our leadership is completely out of touch with what the people want and need, and they have forgotten about us. Now, the result of this dysfunction is, what do we have going on? We've got Amway Corporation is running the Department of Education. We have got Exxon Mobil running the State Department. We have Goldman Sachs, yet again, is running the Treasury Department. We have Breitbart running the White House, and no one in Trenton is running anything at all. It has been dysfunctional for generations now. Now, on the campaign trail, I get asked continually, what is it like running for office in New Jersey? What is the politics like? Is it as corrupt as everyone says it is? And I say, no, it's not. It's significantly worse. It is terribly worse, the corruption of this state. It's a very disappointing and frustrating process. And let's talk about some of the corruption that goes on. And we'll start right here at home. We have an individual who is being anointed by the Democratic leadership to be the presumed front runner to become candidate for governor. Now, let's talk about some facts of what's been going on. Bergen County, the party bosses, over the past 6 months, 6 to 18 months, have received over $100,000 in checks from the front runner's campaign. There's 21 counties in the state. All of the party bosses have been receiving contributions and money from this individual. And surprisingly, it becomes difficult for the rest of us candidates to become nominated, to seek the nomination, to try to gain support of rank-and-file Democrats. And some of the details of the corruption. Okay, let's go down the list. We have one county party boss. He changed his mind. He was originally supporting someone else for governor. And instead, what did he do? Well, he switched to the new front runner. Why? Because he was promised a job as a commissioner of the Port Authority if this new person becomes elected. Now, the Port Authority is probably one of the most corrupt institutions in this state, and probably one of the most corrupt institutions in the whole country. And this is the type of deal we're making. We had another individual, a well-known mayor, who wanted to run, except he suddenly decided to back out. Why did he back out? Because the front runner threatened him with $2 million in negative advertising to destroy his political career. And that's part of the state of New Jersey politics. A third individual, a state senator who wanted to run. And maybe most people here know his name. Very popular fellow. Now, what was he promised? Please drop out of the race, and you get a $500,000 lobbyist job when your term is up. And this is what we have to deal with. And is this what we want for our state? Where the Democratic voters don't get to vote. And the party bosses, the 21 party bosses decide everything? That's not what I want. When this campaign started, we weren't talking about these things. But as we've gone along and experienced the corruption firsthand and witnessed it, I said, I can't be quiet about this. We need to talk about it. We need to get the dirty laundry out in the open. That's the only way.
Welcome back to the New Brunswick Today show. Now joined by that man, Mr. Mark Zinna. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
Now, pretty fiery rhetoric there. You've been in politics now for 6 years, or you've been in elected office for 6 years. But tell us, what's your origin story? How did you get into politics? What made you want to run for your local council?
So a little bit of history. I had the privilege of being at the 1980 Democratic National Convention in New York, and was on the convention floor when Senator Kennedy gave his "The Dream Shall Go On" speech, and it will never die. And I got involved. I got motivated from that point on to be part of the process, part of the solutions. I ran for state assembly in 1988. I didn't win. I worked on both of President Clinton's presidential campaigns, of course, which was a fabulous experience. And then when I found myself moving to Tenafly about 10 years ago, the mayor and the whole council were all Republican. And I became part of the movement to change that, to make it a better place to live. And today, we now have an independent mayor, and all 6 council people are all Democrats. So being part of the change is exciting, and when you keep running and you keep going out there trying to do the right thing, you can actually do good things and make it happen. I've been a councilman now and town council president for 6 years, and it's been a fabulous run so far. I have had executive experience and legislative experience.
Yeah, and you actually run your own businesses, so tell us a little bit about your day job.
Sure. So I have experience in large corporations, $500 million a year businesses as a senior executive there. But now I have a small business. We manage data for law firms. We have about 10 or 12 employees, and we're located in Englewood, and we do business with clients up and down the Eastern Seaboard, New York, Philly, Washington, Boston. It's great business.
Okay. And now, why governor? Why are you seeking the highest office? You kind of explained there why some people chose not to. Why people, either backed out of the race or were pressured out of the race. Why did you say, I want to be in this? I want to run for governor?
Well, public service is a responsibility. As citizens, that is all of our responsibilities. And I feel that the leadership of the Democratic and the Republican Party have let this country down, and they have let the state down for sure. They have their heads in the sand. And after the election results, the presidential results last November in 2016, I couldn't stay home and throw my shoes at the television in anger and disgust at the way things are going. I said, I need to get into this race. I'm going to take my experience as a council member and council president and go out there and serve the public and try to address the issues that are concerning all the residents of the state.
Okay. And one of those big issues, especially here in New Brunswick, is immigration. And a lot of local officials have been kind of put on the spot about, hey, what are you going to do when ICE shows up in your town? And some folks have embraced the concept of sanctuary. Others maybe come up with other terms and try to accomplish the same thing, while other people outright reject it. And some of the candidates in the race, the Republicans, say they will ban sanctuary cities. Tell us, you actually were responsible for passing a sanctuary, was it an ordinance or a resolution in Tenafly?
Right, so we did an ordinance in Tenafly, the Borough Council, but let's just back, which I'm very proud of, let's back up for a second. One of the arguments we get against sanctuary cities that we typically hear is we all have to follow the law of the land, which in a general basis, of course, I agree with that. You have to follow the law of the land, but that doesn't always mean it's right or just, because slavery used to be the law of the land. Separate but equal used to be the law of the land. Jim Crow used to be the law of the land. Women being imprisoned because they had an abortion used to be the law of the land. So sometimes you have to decide whether a particular law is just or not. So we don't feel the way the federal government is handling our immigration issues is just at all. Okay? We have people, 500,000 undocumented immigrants who live in New Jersey. Half of them are paying taxes, filling out tax returns, and getting tax refunds. And a third of these families own houses and pay mortgages. Okay? So we have to deal with that at the local level. We can't control what's going on in Washington. We declared Tenafly a sanctuary city last month, which means that our police officers, they are a fabulous group of individuals, and they are required to enforce the law. But when it comes to this gray area in terms of helping ICE agents, they're not going to get involved in that. Now, our Board of Education also 2 weeks ago passed their own resolutions declaring our school system a sanctuary school. No one checks the immigration status of any kindergartner or fifth grader who comes to the school to become educated. We just educate the kids.
It's safe to assume if you're the governor, you would approach that policy statewide. You'd be a sanctuary state?
That's correct. That's what we would do.
I want to ask about transportation. You have some interesting plans for what you want to do with particularly trains, mass transit in northern New Jersey. You're very familiar with it up in Bergen County. Tell us about what you would like to see done as far as transportation.
So let's not go into all the past head in the sand results of what's happened to get us to the point where we are. It is what it is. We have to move forward. And we need to recognize we have a multi-trillion-dollar economy between New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia and New Jersey. Now, how do we address that? Well, we build the ARC tunnel. That needs to be built because transportation is about the next 50 or 100 years. Okay, so
that's a dangerous situation right now with those tunnels. They're more than 100 years old, right?
It's a terrible situation, and when the current governor decided to cancel it because he was afraid of the cost, okay, well, that cost, to put it in perspective, was the cost of keeping our troops in Iraq for 6 weeks. For 6 weeks, we could have built a $14 to $18 billion tunnel. We have the resources. We don't allocate it properly and use it properly. We need to extend another number 7 train, the subway train, from New York City into New Jersey, so we have one-seat rides. And we also need to look at the George Washington Bridge. When the bridge was built, it was designed to carry the number A subway line from New York City over the George Washington Bridge, across Route 4, going all the way down over across 208 into Patterson, to open up that whole area for all kinds of economic opportunity, and we need to do that.
Okay, so you're supporting big investments in those types of things. Obviously, there's existing infrastructure that needs to be repaired and improved, and there's also other really costly things that the state's going to need to do. How are you going to pay for all of that if you're the governor?
Sure. So let's look at a couple of examples. First off, the intrinsic corruption we have in the state, and most of it's not even illegal. It's perfectly legal to write a check to a group of individuals and get their vote. That's legal in our state and get the nomination, okay? But it's fundamentally morally corrupt. So when we look at first example of that, ExxonMobil, judge said, you're fined $9 billion for polluting and leaving filth behind on the eastern part of the state. And so what does Chris Christie do after he gets a $400,000 contribution to the federal, the Governors Association? He decides ExxonMobil doesn't have to pay $9 billion, they only have to pay $200 million. So there's 25 years worth of transportation trust fund money that could have built bridges, that could build tunnels, billions of dollars. We're going to go after that money. We're going to go back to ExxonMobil and examples like that and find the money and build the things we need to do for the state.
I've been asking everybody the same question, all the governor candidates. Basically, do you support the impeachment of Chris Christie? and or the impeachment of Donald Trump?
Sure, so easy answer. I would like to see Chris Christie out of office, but we have a problem. We have 6 months left in his term, and our legislature the Democrats have been in bed with him for 8 years, and I have no confidence whatsoever that the leadership of the Assembly or the Senate would have the courage to actually get anything done. So,
but do you support it?
Oh, I absolutely support
the impeachment,
it. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. But for a practical purpose, we don't. The legislature doesn't have the courage to get it done.
And how about the President of the United States? Should he be impeached?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I look at what Jeff Sessions himself came out with yesterday, where he's decided to go back to these draconian laws to put people in jail. Sessions is effectively a racist that wants to see as many black men in prison as he can possibly put there. And when something like that happens, that's enough to declare that the president fundamentally incompetent, going the wrong way, and he needs to be removed from office.
Okay. Certainly in agreement there. I want to talk about this campaign, though. You've just last night, a lot of people probably watched 4 of the Democrat candidates have a debate. These are state-sponsored debates. They're actually used with taxpayer money to put on those debates. And explain why you didn't get the invite, and also another candidate didn't
Sure.
get the invite to that debate.
Sure. The two of us didn't get the invite because we didn't write big enough checks. And in the state of New Jersey, when you write a big enough check, the Treasury Department will send you twice as much money, 2-for-1 match, of the public dollars.
Public financing for the election. Yeah.
Public financing. So there are 6 Democratic candidates who have met all the constitutional requirements in terms of our age, our residency, the number of petition signatures. We have done everything constitutionally required, yet ELAC decides to exclude the 2 of us because we haven't written enough checks yet. And that's what you have there. And that's why we had the Outcast debate outside Stockton University, which is a beautiful place. And there was probably 80 or 90 people out there. It was broadcast live on Facebook. We were there for 2.5 hours. And it was fabulous. It was Democrats and Republicans arguing about the issues.
Yeah, it was, I must say, very impressive. More interesting than the sort of headline or the main debate was this bipartisan street corner debate, kind of outdoors, broadcast live on the internet, and it was pretty cool. So kudos to you for that. But tell us, it's kind of an uphill battle running against these big money folks. What keeps you going? Where do you think you're going to be able to turn the tide?
So the reality is, this is a battle. Like you said, it's an uphill battle. But just because of that doesn't mean we go back home and let our message go quiet. Because we're very concerned. We've got the front runner here who's been anointed by the party bosses, okay, Murphy. He is spending, it's all public information, $15 million for a job that's going to pay $175,000 a year. That alone means you don't have the mathematical ability to run a lemonade stand, in terms of what's the right thing to do. So I don't see him as making any changes to this state. He's a bad candidate. He's not the right guy to lead the state. And frankly, in 2 years, we're going to wind up being, if he becomes governor, we're going to wind up being in a primary against him because he's not going to make a single change because it's all about money for him.
So I want to ask, one of the issues you really came out forcefully on is these proposed pipelines and sort of the natural gas infrastructure, all this stuff to bring fracking gas through New Jersey and build pipelines and compressor stations. We've seen opposition, widespread opposition across the state. Tell us, if you're governor, what would you actually do to stop that? Yeah, I'm pretty clear on this issue. This is so backwards, it's ridiculous. We should be focused on renewable energy, not more oil and gas pipelines. So as governor, I would use all the powers of the Attorney General to bring lawsuits against the federal government, against the companies that are attempting to build these pipelines, and get them to stop. And if I was unsuccessful in the lawsuits, I would declare a state of emergency in the state in terms of our drinking water, and I would call out the National Guard to physically stop anyone who tries to build pipelines in this state. So you'll actually involve the National Guard and stop the pipelines from being constructed? Well, absolutely. As governor, my responsibility is to protect the people of the state, not watch out for Wall Street and the oil industry. Yeah, well, and there's no more important resource than water, so it needs to be
Right.
protected.
These pipelines are planned to go over the water supply of half the people in the state. And by the way, they want to take these pipelines and tear apart and be disrespectful to the Ramapo Indians over their native lands. So out in South Dakota or North Dakota, where the governor brought out the National Guard to fight with the Indians to make sure the pipelines are built there, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to bring out the National Guard to protect the Indians and protect the residents of the state.
Wonderful. So, last question. Just want to ask. We have a wide audience here in New Brunswick, Middlesex County. What will you do for New Brunswick and for Middlesex County here?
Look, I think an important issue here is transportation. I think the New Jersey Transit trains that run right here next to us, they need to run on time. We need better service, we need consistent service, and we need it at a price everyone can afford. And the second thing, in terms of the university, this is a fabulous institution, 250 years old. One of the things I'm going to do for this university and the students is we're going to make college more affordable by basically making your tuition, instead of paid on the front end, it's going to be paid on the back end as a percentage of your income when you get out of college, so that students won't be burdened with ridiculous amounts of debt. So if you come out of college and you get a $50,000 a year job, maybe you pay 5% a year for a certain number of years as your tuition payment. But if you want to go out and save the world, let's say and build houses in Appalachia, and you only make $10,000 a year, you'll still only have to pay 5%. So a couple of things. It gives the schools the incentive to make sure it's training our young people for jobs that are viable in the real world today, new economy jobs. Also make sure it's incentivizing for public service, which is incredibly important to us. And then it gives the university the incentive to do the right thing, and it doesn't burden our students with ridiculous amounts of debt when they're just starting out their lives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President, and thank you for joining us today on the New Brunswick Today Show. This is Tenafly Council President and Democratic Governor candidate Mark Zinna. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll be back next week with another interview with one of the gubernatorial candidates. And come stop by Hidden Grounds and get one of these wonderful vanilla spice brews. Thank you so much, Mr. Zinna. Good luck.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.